Council, staff, and members of the public. I don't think we've had this many people in the council chambers since before COVID, so it's just wonderful to see everyone here. And also for those joining virtually, thank you for coming. For those who are here, if I could please ask you to put your phone on silent. And also, I would like to recognize that we do have quorum, but we also have two members joining us virtually this evening. So Councillor Drodge and Councillor Waters are joining us virtually. So if I miss you, please just turn on your camera and we'll recognize you at that time if you have questions or comments. So with that, then, I would ask if Councillor Richardson would please open with our land acknowledgement.
Sure. The town of Innisfil acknowledges that the town of Innisfil is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history. The town also acknowledged that this land is the traditional territories of the First Peoples of Turtle Island. It is shared between the Anishinaabe peoples of Beausoleil First Nation, Chippewas of Rama First Nation, and Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation, and we thank them for their generations of stewardship. This meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people, and as settlers, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. The town acknowledges the forced sacrifices that are the foundation of Canadian society today. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit.
Thank you very much, Councillor Richardson. So now we'll move to item 2 of the agenda, which is open forum. We did have one member sign up for open forum this evening, and that would be Ms. Orsatti, former Councillor Orsatti. It still feels funny not to call you a councillor. So whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor and members of Council. I wanted to start by saying that staff in all departments have worked hard on this 23-24 budget. It is one of the tightest budgets that I have seen in years. And Council has been faced with the consequences of the past budget of 0% in 2021 and 1% in 2022 to assist residents after the pandemic. And we knew on Council at that time the consequences would be a higher budget to catch up, and that would be in the levels of 2023 and 2024 and a possible 6 to 7% discussion at that time. My ask tonight is for Council to consider the library request for the 1 FTE senior services request for the 23 and 24 budget. This was removed from the budget cycle. The library board and staff had addressed the needs of the most vulnerable population in our community, our seniors. Many live alone, they're isolated, they're struggling on fixed income, and some at below poverty level. There is a great need for programs and services that benefit their mental health, their well-being, to support this in our growing senior population. The library ask was for a 9-month position in 2023 and a full FTE in 2024. If Council wanted to look at another savings option, this could realistically be a 6-month position in 2023, because by the time you do the hire, that's likely when the staff member would be on board. There are limited to no programs for seniors in Innisfil, other than in Sandy Cove Acres, which is a private residence community that other seniors cannot join into. I want to ask you to consider this passionate request to support our vulnerable seniors, the population in Innisfil, with this 2023 ask for an FTE to support these seniors with programs and support. And thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Ms. Orsatti. Next, we will have item 3, which is the approval of the agenda, and the mover and a seconder for the agenda for February the 8th to be approved as printed. Moved by Deputy Mayor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Richardson. All those in favor? Councillor Drodge. Are you voting or did you have a comment? Thank you very much. I'll ask staff at this point, any agenda repair required?
No, Your Worship, the agenda is fine as initially published.
Thank you. All those in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed? That's carried. Next, I'd ask if there's any disclosures of interest, pecuniary or conflict of interest on any of tonight's agendas with any member of council. Seeing no hands, if one becomes apparent to you during the conversation, please let us know at that time and clerks will forward you the paperwork to fill out. And then we go to item 5, which is presentations and petitions. And we're very pleased tonight to have the President and CEO, Gail Hunt, here from Royal Victoria Hospital, Doug Frost, the board chair, and some fellow named Mr. Rayner, who's the Vice President of Strategy and Communications and Stakeholder Relations. So welcome, and please come forward. And whenever you're ready, we're happy to hear your presentation. And thank you for being here.
My name is Doug Frost. It's my honor to be chair of the Royal Victoria Regional Health Centre Board of Directors. When I took over as the chair last year in June, I've been a board member for 9 years and the last 3 as vice chair. And during that last decade, we've really seen substantial growth in the operations and the scope of services offered by RVH, including the opening of space at the Rizzardo Health Centre right here in Innisfil. So this evening I'm joined by Gail Hunt, who's RVH's new president and CEO, as well as another face that you may be familiar with, Jason Rayner, who is RVH's new vice president of strategy, stakeholder relations, and communications. He comes with a full title. So we're very pleased to have the opportunity to come before council and members of the public to tell you our story of providing world-class care to Innisfil residents and beyond. And it's really a story that began in 1897. We've just had our 125th birthday, our anniversary. And so for over 125 years, RVH has been there supporting you from incredible beginnings through all life has in store, right up until the final chapter is written. Today, with the generosity of the provincial taxpayers, who provide about $1 million a day of operating funding to the hospital, we run a regional health center that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We have about 48,000 Innisfil patients visit us per year, supported by about 4,000 talented staff, physicians, and volunteers at the health center. So to put that in perspective, imagine this council chamber full. That's how many Innisfil residents we see at RVH each and every day. So to share more about our services, the services we provide and the state of healthcare today, I will turn it over to Gail. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Doug. So thank you and good evening, Mayor Dolan and councillors. Thank you so much to have us here tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. So we know that healthcare consistently ranks at the top of the list of Canadian concerns. You might notice it in the news from time to time, and so it should. We're not only coming out of the worst pandemic in a generation that continues to challenge our human resources, but we have an aging population that has more complex and chronic needs than ever before. So indeed, in Simcoe Muskoka, we tend to have more health risk factors than the rest of the province. 45% of our region's residents have a chronic condition like diabetes, health disease, cancer, or respiratory illness, and 1 in 5 has multiple conditions. And our aging population in this region is also growing faster than the provincial average. So thankfully, technology is advancing to provide earlier detection and more advanced treatment. For example, we are thrilled that Innisfil residents will soon benefit from the PET-CT scanner, which allows specialists to evaluate organ and tissue functioning by identifying changes at the cellular level. This allows for early detection of diseases like cancer. And in addition, RVH has been approved for a 3rd MRI recently, which will help address the wait list for this important diagnostic tool that uses a magnetic field and computer-generated radio waves to create detailed images of, for example, your brain to diagnose stroke. So technology is also helping improve the way patients interact with the healthcare system. Some of you may have already heard of our patient portal and may be users of it. We're proud to have launched the patient portal that allows timely access to appointments and lab results. And we did this with our 3 partner hospitals, Collingwood General Marine Hospital, Georgian Bay General Hospital, and Headwaters Healthcare Center. And we'll be adding more functionality as we evolve this platform. And I'm especially proud of RVH's Center for Education and Research that continues to reach for improved patient experience and outcomes. Not only do we have dozens of active clinical trials going on, but our researchers are advancing our understanding of disease detection, diagnosis, and treatment in real time. For example, at the beginning of the pandemic and well before the availability of COVID vaccines, RVH pursued membership in the World Health Organization's Solidarity Trial, which permitted only a handful of hospitals across Canada to have access to potential life-saving drugs for patients struggling with COVID-19. So despite the challenges of COVID-19, the center is as busy as ever. I think I missed something there, sorry. The center is as busy as ever with our world-class research, publication and grant support rising every year. And in this past year alone, RVH has been awarded more than $600,000 in research grants, while a recent $1 million gift will make RVH a provincial leader in immersive medical education. But of course, world-class healthcare is of course only one part of, technology is only one part of that. It involves meeting our patients where they're at and helping them navigate this complex system of healthcare. As an example, we've expanded our Indigenous support services by welcoming on an Indigenous patient navigator and an Indigenous transition facilitator to our team. So improved patient outcomes require more than the success of the acute health center. We must thoughtfully integrate with our primary and community care. This is why we are a member of the Ontario Health Team, serving Innisfil and the surrounding area. The OHT is currently focused on enhancing care for frail seniors, palliative care, as well as COVID-19 recovery and ongoing response. But before I hand it over to Jason to talk about the future of healthcare closer to home, I want to share a story, Bill's story. So last year, there were more than 100,000 visits to our cancer center, and about 3/4 of those people came to us from outside the Barrie area. And one of those people was 67-year-old Bill Paris, shown here with his eldest granddaughter, Rachel, age 7. Having care close to home was very important to Bill, who resides on a working farm in Phelpston. Just this week, he completed his final of 33 radiation treatments and then rang our gong to celebrate that you see there. Simply traveling from Phelpston to Barrie meant that Bill could spend valuable time with his wife Sharon, 2 daughters, and 4 grandchildren, all while staying on the farm. Bill's story is everyone's story. Whether you are in Phelpston or Innisfil, there is comfort being with your family when going through an illness, and nothing beats sleeping in your own bed at night. And it is for Bills, it's for the Bills of this region and their families that we are here today. And I will hand it over to Jason now. I'm sorry for the company I keep. He will he will be showing a little bit more about the organization.
Thanks very much, Gail. Delighted to be here, Your Worship, members of council. A wise man once told me that you can take the man out of Innisfil, but you can't take the Innisfil out of the man. And I think that's so true. Seeing so many familiar faces here, it's just a delight. So tonight I'm here to continue the story of what the future of world-class healthcare will look like for Innisfil residents, like my parents who live in Guildford. Although this next image is not exactly what the design will look like, thankfully, it will be developed with community engagement as we move forward. But I want to give you a sense of what the South Campus will look like over time. The first phase will be a health center focused on outpatient clinics, day procedures, as well as an urgent care center. Critically needed in this community, as we know, in terms of primary care. And that augmentation of acute care. Then we'll add inpatient units that are not dependent on the emergency department, such as seniors care and rehabilitation. It's important to note that the north and south campuses of RVH are dependent on one another. 2 sites, 1 system, avoiding duplication. For example, a resident may receive advanced cardiac care at the north campus, but have their diagnostic and follow-up at the South Campus. And so the integration of the two sites and the reduction of costs over time, as you can see. Within 20 years, the South Campus will evolve to be a full-service acute care hospital with a 24/7 emergency department, birthing units, and associated operating rooms as well. The size of the South Campus at completion will be about the size that RVH is today. Site planning, as you probably know, is well underway for the 83-acre parcel located not far from here, a stone's throw, if you will, at Yonge Street and Innisfil Beach Road on the southwest corner. We really do appreciate staff's support for that site planning process and the assistance as we work through the various studies and approvals required for this game-changing development. And game-changing it is in several ways. First, this isn't going to just be any ordinary building. It will be sustainably designed to bring the outdoors in and facilitate healing in beautiful natural surroundings, incorporating biophilic design. Second, with you, your worship, and your team's help, it will integrate with the town's civic campus and master planning process, creating a connected health and wellness heart for Innisfil that will pulse and reverberate throughout the community as we collectively improve on the social determinants of health in this area. Third, dare I say, it will be one of the jewels in the crown of Innisfil's future innovation aspirations. Centers of excellence, research, academic collaboration, incubators, entrepreneurs will all be drawn to this over $800 million annual economic impact of this place that will provide thousands of high-quality jobs for our communities. But of course, your worship, members of council, you already knew that. Town councils, Innisfil town councils, have successively, methodically, and speaking a lot better than I can, purposefully been moving forward in this direction for more than a decade. It began as an advisory committee to council that recommended more primary care right here close to home. That led to the concept, design, and construction of the Rizzardo Health and Wellness Center, a beautiful, beautiful building that is the anchor for healthcare here now. Subsequent policies and plans, including our health strategy, the South Simcoe Community Wellbeing and Safety Plan, and indeed your own community strategic plan, Innovative Innisfil 2030, all point to delivering a high quality of life through world-class care close to home. Not just for those that call Innisfil home today, but the tens of thousands that are coming to the Innisfil community over the next several years. Before closing, we want to extend our appreciation for the Innisfil campaign cabinet members who are helping us keep life wild by engaging our community directly to support these ambitious growth plans. And some of you, all of you know who these people are. Al Gilchrist, who requires no introduction, Ann Kell, Ann Smith, Barb Bagley, and Harry Ices. This $100 million campaign is the largest fundraising effort of its kind in the region, and we're hopeful that all levels of government, including municipalities, will participate in this critically important expansion plan, accessing funds and expediting approvals. And so the question is to you, your worship, members of council, the council of 22-26 to 26, what will your legacy be in terms of quality of care for your community? Will you help us advance the most significant factor impacting quality of life that will also double as an economic engine for Innisfil? If so, we'd be delighted to continue this conversation. We'd be happy to come back, your worship, members of council, and have a workshop with you when you have perhaps less on your mind than you do tonight, to engage in some of those details about how we can go ahead and move this project forward with your CAO's help, with your staff's help, the government relations strategy that will be necessary and critical to move those approvals along with ministry and provincial funders. Your worship, members of council, we really appreciate the opportunity tonight and happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rayner. Questions or comments from members of council? I have a couple, but most of them comments. So yes, so I just wanted to also recognize Barb Love, who was on the original team that suggested we need to do more with medical care, and I believe that was under former Mayor Bagley's watch. And I've also wanted to acknowledge that I believe Al is, if he hasn't knocked on your door already, he's going to. He's the most energetic person that I've met when it comes to getting people excited about this project. So thank you for being there, and I understand you're going to be jumping in very cold Lake Simcoe and over the next little while, so I appreciate that as well. Chair Frost, your comment about filling up this room with people from Innisfil that are patients every day of RVH. The only time we fill up this room is when we've done something really stupid, and then we have to open up the wall. So, but I certainly acknowledge that that is a number of people. I also wanted to say that the Rizzardo Health and Wellness Center with Innisfil's Winter Weekends had a health and wellness fair at the Rizzardo Health and Wellness Center last Saturday, and I attended, and I was so very happy to see a number of RVH staff there. Very helpful, talking about the new initiative with the connecting, and also making sure everybody there knew all about the screenings that they should be making sure that they had. And then finally, to you, President Hunt, I just wanted to thank you personally for the letter of support that you sent to us. You know we're desperately seeking physicians for a walk-in clinic. We have space for them, or nurse practitioners, or anyone who can provide care in that space, and really appreciated the letter of support that you sent on our behalf. So with that, sorry, Councillor Waters, you had a question?
Yes, I did. I just want to take an opportunity to welcome Jason back to the fold. I couldn't think of a better person for the role he's now fulfilling. So I just wanted to take this opportunity because he knows Innisfil really well. He knows staff, he knows council. He's familiar with the portfolio. So it's I just want to say hello and welcome back, and appreciate the position that you're in. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. I'm seeing no other hands, so at this point, I'd ask for a mover and a seconder, please, that the presentation regarding the RVH update be received with thanks. Councillor Zanella, Councillor Constantine, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. Of course, you're welcome to stay, but please feel free to exit whenever you like. Thank you. Next, we have item 6, which is, oh, sorry, that was item 6. Item 6, delegations by members of the public. We have none. Item 7, county council, municipal associations, any work that you've been doing on behalf of the organization or on behalf of the town. I'll start with Councillor Richardson.
So just, this is where I can talk about the library board meeting. Okay. So we attended our first library board meeting on January 16th. Ann Smith was elected as chair, and Sue Bennett was elected as our vice chair. We got to meet all the different department managers and learned of all their roles. We talked about some upcoming events, as well as the C.B. Walters reading contest that they had, which was fantastic. I was really glad that I was able to attend that. That was really great. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor, did you want to talk about County Council?
Thank you, Worship. County, a lot of the things that came up on county were just regular run-of-the-mill. Aside from the budget, we finalized the budget for the county, passing it. There was a motion put on the floor for some information to be brought back by Mayor Leduc. He will be presenting that next meeting, I believe, or the meeting after. And other than that, it's just business as usual. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just had one committee of note, and that was the Police Services Board. Very happy to announce that John Van Dyke, our current acting Chief of Police, will be our new Chief of Police. Chief Designate Van Dyke will be sworn in here in this room on Thursday, March the 9th at 3 p.m., and it's open to anyone who would like to attend. Seeing no other hands, then we'll go to the consent list. So I'll read through all of the titles. If you wish to just discuss an item or make a comment on an item, you don't have to pull it, but if there's going to be a lot of discussion, it'd be best if it got pulled to committee of the whole. So if you're here for an item and it doesn't get pulled, you'll know that it will be ratified at the end of the evening, and if then it probably isn't necessary for you to stay if you don't want to stay. So we'll start with item A1, which is the special council meeting minutes dated December the 7th, our inaugural. A2, council meeting minutes dated January the 11th. A3, the special council meeting minutes dated January the 18th. A4, the special council meeting, budget meetings dated January the 25th and the 27th. There are no reports from various committees, so we'll go right into staff reports for action. C1, the staff report for the 2023-2024 final operating and capital budgets. Nobody wants to pull that. No. Okay. Referred by Councillor Richardson. C2, the South Simcoe Police Services 2023 cost-sharing ratio and budget. C3, the staff report for Bill 23, More Homes Build Faster Act. Deputy Mayor Fowler. C4, the street naming for Innis Village draft approved plan of subdivision. Barden Place. C5, the appointment of members of the Committee of Adjustment for the 2022-2026 term of council. Deputy Mayor Fowler. C6, the In-Services 2023 water and wastewater rate approval. Councillor Alex Waters. Refer to committee. D1, the Q4 building permits issued, and it is available on the website if anybody's interested. E1, the bylaw for Block 1 registered part lot control imposed planning act. Councillor Saunders. There's no correspondence for action. Under the correspondence for information, G1, the Innisfil Public Library Board minutes from November 21st. G2, the Police Services Board from December 14th. G3, proclamation regarding Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Day. And G4, Ontario Heritage Week, which is February 20th to the 26th. So I see no other items. That the consent list recommendation that the items that are listed on the screen, make sure they match with my records. Be referred to committee of the whole, and that the rest of the items be declared voted on. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Drodge and Councillor Richardson, all those in favor? That is carried. And now motion to resolve into committee of the whole, moved by Councillor Icey, seconded by Councillor Saunders. All those in favor? That is carried. So that takes us to item C1 and Councillor Richardson.
Okay. So I would like to propose a motion to reconsider the motion that we put through of having the full-time, the EDI library move to 2024 and removing the senior services librarian. Please.
Madam Clerk.
Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. In order to do that, we would need to table item C1 to consider the reconsideration motion. And once that has been worked through, then we would go back to C1.
Thank you. So motion to table item C1 till we move through the reconsideration motion. Moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Zanella. All those in favor? That's carried.
Okay.
So it's a reconsideration motion, so that requires 2/3 in order to put it on the floor.
Yep.
Not to approve, like, just want to be clear, I'll go through the clerk. So this is to, 2/3 is to put it on the floor and not to actually approve the motion?
That's correct, Your Worship. Council needs to waive the notice requirements, which requires a 2/3 majority vote. Once they've passed that motion that they will reconsider the initial motion, then the original motion as initially adopted will be presented on the screen.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder, Councillor Richardson?
Yes, Councillor Saunders.
Thank you. All those in favor of reconsideration? That's carried. Now, I'm just going to take a moment and say that for those watching, we are a new council. We were sworn in on December the 7th, and we're still learning our ropes. So if this gets a little messy, please understand that there's 5 new members who've never been at this table before and doing a budget. So please bear with us and be patient. And with the clerk's office and the staff's help, we'll make our way through this. And so please don't be afraid ever to ask a question if you're not understanding the process, or if you want to just reassure what you're voting on. Please make sure you put up your hand, and we'll get through this. Thank you.
Okay, so now I talk about what my motion is, right? Okay. So, sorry. Oh, no.
Actually, I believe that you provided a revised recommendation that you wanted to put on the...
Yes, so what I would like to recommend is that the senior librarian be added to the last quarter of the 2024 operating budget, please.
So look on the screen, Councillor Richardson, and see if that is the motion that you want to put forward.
Exactly.
Okay, and do you have a seconder?
Councillor Saunders.
Councillor Saunders. Okay, we have a motion that's been, a revised recommendation that's been duly moved and seconded, and I'll ask council who has any questions or comments on this recommendation.
Can I make a comment on it?
Yeah, if you'd like to go first of all, of course you can.
So I just wanted to reiterate to the council and to the public that, again, they haven't hired staff since 2016. There is definitely a need in our community for a senior services librarian. The reason our CEO and our board chair was not here the day of the budget was because they were accepting a grant from the ministry for our seniors. So in thinking the same thing of how we have a town square, that we also need to have programming for it. Well, same theory, if we have a grant of money that we need, that we can spend, like we need someone to help to delegate to spend that and to program for that to be spent the most wisely.
Does your seconder want to add anything?
I just think the wording is a little bit wrong on this part 2. It says the senior services librarian. It should be the seniors, because they're not just doing it. It's not a senior person. They're working with the seniors. So I think that's when we got a little messed up when we first voted on it.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, that's a friendly amendment I can see. All right, so questions or comments on the revised recommendation? Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. Just maybe a few more questions on the impact that this would have on the budget. I know during budget days, council struggled with the ask of the library as a whole, and unfortunately, we in an effort to get the impact of the budget to our residents lowered as much as we could. That's where some of the adjustments were made to this doesn't exactly reverse what we changed, but I just wanted to get maybe staff's comment on the impact, maybe on the rate of change for property taxes.
Mr. Melanishen?
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Ices. This impact, the addition of the quarter for Q4 for this one position in totality is just over $27,000. Not monumental in the scheme of things. It translates to about $1.35 per household, or a 0.03% increase on the budget. I would be remiss if I saying, just providing a word of caution to council. This position, assumingly, is going to be moving forward into the 26 year, post-24 into 2025. And this is just one of the change requests. If the council approves this one quarter position for the quarter, the position will be presented in 2025, which will probably be in the $80,000, $84,000 mark, an additional increase to the 2025 budget. So committing now to this one, assuming that position will carry forward into 2025. And my word, I want council to make a fully informed decision. At budget deliberations, we did make mention of the change requests that staff have withheld from the town's perspective. There are approximately 26 position full-time equivalents, $2.7 million worth of potential change requests that will be asked for in 2025 that were not presented to council this budget iteration. So I want council to be mindful that there are going to be considerations in 2025 that need to be taken into account. And this increment for just one quarter is small for this year, or for 2024, but will amount to a 0.11% increase in 2025. So I just want council to be aware of that as they move forward in their decision-making process with this position.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just comment to that statement was just made. We did intentionally move it to the 2025 for consideration. So I think we all knew that. As not that we didn't say no to the position, we just said we wanted to move it to the 2025 budget year. So I think we were realized that it would be one of the primary positions that we would have considered in 2025. So I appreciate the comment, but I think we already were familiar with that and ready to accept that because I think we thought the position was required. So just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Drodge.
Yeah, I also just wanted to point out through you, Your Worship, that the library back in January 27th did receive some grant money from the MPP Raymond Cho of the Minister of Seniors and Accessibility, and also our MPP Andrea Kanjan. So for us to not support this, we're contradicting a little bit to what they're trying to do with the library by supporting seniors and their accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Could I ask, do we have, even with that 27, what the percentage, right now we're sitting at 5.25. What that might do to 2024?
Yes.
We're at 4.9 something, because so we used $500,000, or not quite $500,000, in tax stabilization reserves in 23, which brought 23 down, but that up to 24, did it not? I can't find it.
To Your
right
Worship, yes, you are correct. The 2024 was increased roughly. I think we started off at about 4.45, and with the offset for the tax rate stabilization reserve into 2024, we landed at 4.92. So this incremental increase for the library position for Q4 takes it up 0.03% to 4.95 final budget for 2024.
Thank you. And then I guess my final question would be to the presenters. Is there an equal amount to take out at some point? I mean, I know we had one member of council who didn't support the budget, and adding more is not going to be going in the right direction. So we're sitting at 5.25 now. and 4.935. Is there an appetite then to try to carve something else out in order to pay for this position? Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. So I had a question that came to me from one of the residents, and I thought it was a good one. So I wanted to ask Finance about the current staffing that we have at the town. We all know that we've heard the challenges that the town and a lot of businesses are having filling staff positions. And so the question was, could there be a budget impact on those times when those jobs are vacant? How is that those funds that are budgeted that aren't being spent because the positions are vacant? How is that being dealt with in the budget? And is there an opportunity to, in this environment, to say, the positions are open longer, so that means we can take a certain amount out of the budget?
Mr. Milanish, I don't know if you wanted to address that now on this motion or when the full motion comes forward, but
I'm prepared. I'm happy
Go
to
ahead
answer the
then.
question. Through
Go
your
ahead.
worship to Councillor Ices. Great question. As we went through budget deliberations, we did want to highlight the effort that went into it. We did turn over every single rock. The financial analyst led by Treasurer Webb did a deep dive on every account. So we analyzed those salary plans, and when people were going to start, we predicted, we don't budget for a full year knowing someone's going to start in June, that type of thing. We are very, very careful to create a very tight salary plan because we didn't have the opportunity, we didn't have the wiggle room just in case. We do take into account what we call in-year changes. So someone resigns, someone retires, someone gets sick, someone dies, and we have to replace those positions, but those are the unknowns. So we go back and we say, okay, historically, how have we handled that? What is it? And we are fully aware that in this market, it's an employee's market, so employees have the choice. It is much more difficult to recruit. So we have something we call it gapping dollars, but it's a line item in the budget. It's called we account for vacant positions. It is a direct reduction to the tax levy. We have taken that amount and we've actually doubled it from last year. So we've had more than accounted for any excesses of time that people are vacant. So I hesitate adding more to that because it's going to be a challenge. We're going to be setting processes in place to make sure we capture those every time an employee is gone and roll that to a corporate level to offset those. We call them gapping dollars or vacant position dollars. So I think we have more than adequately, by more than doubling that account, we have covered all our bases and have no more wiggle room to reduce the budget. I would say we've accounted for all potential vacant positions going forward.
anyone else? I have a question, Mr. Milanishin, and I'm sorry if I didn't hear you answer it before, but the position in 2025, so when we're sitting here in 2024 working on the 2025-2026 budget, what will we, by making this decision tonight, what will we automatically be committed to as an increase in the 2025 and 2026 years?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, for clarification, that position will add about a 0.11% increase, roughly. I think the balance was about 84,000 automatically right on top of the tax levy. And the reason I word of caution too, because if you remember Chief Thomas, who talks about fire inspectors needed in the 2025 year, and firefighters and captains. So there are a bigger pie that should be considered in totality. I just want council to be fully informed of some of these items. Planners, customer service, we had mentioned in the past as well. So you are, with the Q4 amendment as proposed, the impact into 2025 will be 0.11% or 85,000 roughly on the tax levy immediately.
Thank you. So I would love to support this motion. I know Councillor Richardson and Councillor Saunders, pulled back quite a bit from your original position in order to get that there, and I very much appreciate that. I love our library. I'm very, very proud of our library. My issue is this: we don't know what we don't know, and if ever we didn't know before, the last 3 years have proved to us that anything can happen. And I very much would love to see this position go forward, but I hate tying our hands now knowing that we're going to start with that much of an increase regardless of what else we need, because we've already pre-committed to this position before we sit down with the whole picture, all the information, the whole budget. So what we're doing right now is we're making a decision when we only see this much of the information instead of this much of the information. And that's what scares me, although I can tell you I absolutely agree with having somebody look after our seniors, but it's just that pre-committing to the next budget already when we got 2 years of who knows what in front of us. So for that reason, I'm not able to support it, but I also just wanted to recognize one other fault, I think, in the way that we put forward our motion on the Friday. Brought to my attention by a library board member is that it's the library board's decision, not this council's decision, who they hire and what those people do that they hire. So to be so prescribed in the motion, I would just wonder, do we need to be less subscribed and just say the funds for a full-time community library, EDI, be moved so that we're not committing. It's just the process of us looking like we're telling the library board how to do their job, and I don't think that that's our job. So I'm going to vote against it, and I'm sorry for the only reason that I don't want to pre-commit. In 2 years from now, I hope I can say I was wrong. I really do. I hope I can say, you guys were right, I was wrong. But we're going in with 5.25. And that's taking a whole bunch of money out of the tax rate stabilization reserve. And that's pushing up our 24 to 4.93. So for those reasons, I'm going to vote opposed. And just would ask the mover and the seconder if they have any issue with the comment of adding that funding, but it's recognizing that it's the library board's decision and not ours. And I don't know how I would amend that or whether it's required, but just my comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe that because we're looking at a revised recommendation at the moment, it could potentially, I'm trying to think of how the best way to manage this. I think it would go back to the mover and the seconder and council, or council would need to vote on whether to amend this recommendation. It would be, you would have to put an amendment on the floor to change clause 2.
And I'm not seeing any comments from the mover and the seconder. They're members of the library board, and my comments will be recorded, but I just want to recognize that the difference between, say, a member of staff here and funding for the library board. Thank you. So I'm seeing no other comments or questions, so we will call the vote. All in favor of the recommendation, the revised recommendation? 3, 4, 5, 6, that's carried. Thank you. Next, we'll move to resume consideration of item C.1, and that We need a mover and a seconder, please, to resume consideration of C.1. Councillor Richardson, Deputy Mayor Fowler, all those in favor? That's carried. Now, we'll ask for questions or comments on any other parts of the budget, operating or capital. So this is the highest increase we've had in many, many years. I definitely can tell you that it is a budget of restraint and one that has been, I have never, in all my 28 budgets, I have never been to this table and asked for stuff to be put back in that was out. Stuff that was taken out that I believe is required for core services like ditching and gravel and slurry seal. And so, but now is the time because we're looking at 5.25 and that's already using a bunch of money out of reserves. So if people are not happy with this number, now is the time for you to suggest what can come out, what don't we have to do. Councillor Ices?
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to perhaps echo your comments. I know residents are not going to be happy with this. These are difficult times. We're seeing prices of everything going up. But I feel as a council that we have, with the help of staff, as Mr. Melanishin said, turned over every rock to do the best that we can in this situation. So those would be my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say that, the reason we have this increase is because previous council decided on a 0% during the pandemic and a 2.5%. And we all knew at that time, and including all the people who were in that last council, that that this budget year was going to be larger than anticipated. Plus, we have an inflation rate which we've never seen. I'm not too sure I won't say my lifetime, but in terms of a rate which is higher than we've seen in at least the last 20 years. So there are many reasons why this happened. We had good discussion. These items were put back on because we thought that staff needed them in order to, offer the same type of offerings that we've had before. There wasn't a reduced service level. So we were told that this would maintain the service levels that we requested. So there are many reasons why it's higher, but we all had a good debate on the last council meeting, and I think it is where it is. And many councils around the province are having this same debate. Many councils started off with much higher rate, around 7 or 7.5%. In fact, at the conference, at the FCM conference, I've talked to many councillors, and I've heard 7.5%, and we heard Barrie was much higher, but whittled it back down. But I think they're still higher than us now. So I think we've done an excellent job. We need the services that we voted on. They were put back in for reasons, and as you mentioned, your mayor, that it was one of the tightest budgets you had ever seen before we put things back in. So you realized as well that was the case, that it was one of the tightest budgets you had ever seen at the 4.9%, I think it was, for 2023. So I think staff have done a good job. They need the items that we've put back into the budget so they can offer the same level of service. So I'm okay with this, and it is what it is for now, and hopefully 2025 and 26, those levels won't be nearly as high as this one here. We'll hopefully be able to drop them back down to 2 or 3%. So I just wanted to say that I'm in favor of the discussions, the comments that were made, and the work that staff have done to maintain, a minimum increase, but maintaining services. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. When we went through this discussion over those 2 days, we were looking at what we could do with the resources that we had, and we're expecting. Even one of the items on the agenda tonight, C3, Bill 23, we don't know the full impact of that. So, I mean, if that ends up coming down hard on us and the sources of income we have go away, we have to find a way to compensate. So now we're put into a position where we have to rely heavily on the taxpayer again, the tax levy. And that's something that we were put into a very, very difficult position, and there were no perfect answers. So we did the best we could with what we had, and we're still trying to prepare for what potentially could be coming down from the province. So it's not as all black and white as everyone wants to make it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, can I ask for a recorded vote?
Okay, we do our recorded votes in a random order, and we're voting on the motion as presented on the PowerPoint. And we'll be starting off with Mayor Lynn-Dolan.
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Fowler.
In favor.
Councillor Ices.
In favor.
Councillor Constantine.
In favor.
Councillor Richardson.
In favor.
Councillor Waters.
In favor.
Councillor Zanella.
In favor.
Councillor Saunders.
In favor.
Councillor Doge.
In favor.
The motion carries with 9 in favor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next, we'll move on to item C3, and that was pulled by Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just pulling this for some questions. So if I can get some answers. I'm reading through this, and I understand that Bill 23 has gotten royal assent, but from my understanding, the means of enforcing them, the Bill 23 has not been put into play yet. Am I correct with this?
Through the chair, so the bill has reached royal assent, however, has not reached proclamation.
Okay. All right. So I'm reading through the reports, C3, and I've got a few questions. A few things stood out. For example, on page 2 of the report, the reduction, it says here, the amendment apply reductions of exemptions of development charges, which are in addition to those already included in the Development Charges Act. So it states in the first paragraph that new development charges for bylaws approved after June 1st, 2022, beginning with a 20% reduction in the first year, which is gradually lessened until the full rate applies in 5 years. And then in the second paragraph, additional development charge discounts are proposed on rental housing developments of 4 or more units with discounts of 25%. So my question is it the 25% that applies, or is it the 20%, then the 25% is added on top of it?
Through the chair, so it's an additional DC credit for projects which are specific to attainable and affordable housing, in addition to all other development charges under the development charge bylaw.
So in essence, it would be 45% off the DC charges?
Through the chair, it could be for an affordable housing project.
The second question I have is on page 3. What was it? The proposed, sorry, my mouse is acting up. Deductions and exemptions are proposed for parkland dedication cash in lieu of payments. So the maximum alternative dedication rate of 1 hectare for 600 units of land, or 1 hectare for 1,000 units for cash in lieu of. Now, that's capped at 15 or 20%. What kind of impact are we looking at if that goes through by comparison?
Mr. Carrera, sorry, I'm not sure you can answer that, but approximately?
Through the chair, it is difficult to give an exact number or percentage. It would it would matter. The built form, for example, would matter, whether it's intensification project or greenfield. So yeah, it is difficult to give a precise number, but we could take that back certainly and provide a bit more detail.
If I may then, so we're looking at a even greater decrease in the cost of cash in lieu of, if they wish to, for example, take the parkland out of the development that's being proposed to the town, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
And lastly, on page 4, the site planning approval for 10 units or less, what impact does this have with the town if, for example, a developer takes a piece of land and he wants to put 9 homes on it? It says that we can't, where is it here? Architectural and landscaping details cannot be part of the review if it's more than 10, so we're losing that off the get-go. So we can't create if we're looking to build a region of town with a specific design or theme to it, for lack of a better term, we're losing that. And anything over 10, the town will not be able to provide input on servicing capacity, access, drainage, and infrastructure. So what powers do the town have when the developers come and say, we're putting in 30, 40, 50 units, here's our design. We can't say anything about it. What powers does the town have at that point?
Mr. Carrera?
Through the chair, so you are right, through Bill 23, there are changes to site plan control and what we can ask for through the site plan application process. However, as part of this report, there is also a recommendation to look at our planning processes, both in response to Bill 23 and Bill 109, and to come back with a comprehensive report to council, which might look to change some of our processes in response to that change in the site plan regulations.
So in essence, we're looking at alternatives that we can use to combat Bill 23 directly, yes?
Through the chair, yes, we're exploring all our options to ensure that we meet our service standards and the minimum legislative requirements of the Planning Act.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on C3? Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Just to clarify, one of the comments that Deputy Mayor had asked was in terms of the proclamation, and there are specific sections. So it did receive royal assent. Certain areas have received proclamation. There are some of the heritage provisions and a couple of other sections that have not. We've seen some of the Conservation Authority regulations have been proclaimed, so the majority has received proclamation as of January 1 of 2023, but there are very specific sections that have not at this point in time, so I just wanted that to be clear.
Thank you for that. Other questions or comments on item C3? And Deputy Mayor Fowler, do you have a seconder? Councillor Zanella is your seconder. I also have this all marked up in yellow, this particular item, so I'm just going to go. Some of them were already covered by the Deputy Mayor, but my question around that phasing in of the 5-year phase-in for the development charges on all new development, so that doesn't matter whether it's affordable, attainable, all new development gets those breaks?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you. And then in the next paragraph, it talks about where you have rental housing developments of 4 or more units and the 25% discount that was talked about for 3 or more bedrooms. I guess my question, or what came to mind when I was reading that, was how do we monitor that? Because what if somebody builds a monster home and says it's a 4 rental unit and get the discounts and then move in and it's a single residence?
Through the chair, that's a great question, and ultimately one that will be answered over time. The town will need to undertake a comprehensive housing strategy program, which will look at implementation, things like incentives, and also response really to what's in Bill 23 respecting the DC credits. So it's expected that as well, following Bill 23, that additional detailed regulations will be provided in the future by the province, which will likely be a lot more prescriptive and answer some of the nature of the questions that you're asking.
Thank you. Yeah, the devil is in the details, is it not? The next piece that really concerned me, and I was briefed on this, but I didn't capture this piece until I read your report about the growth-related studies that are no longer DC eligible. So that means our transportation master plan and all of those items would be not DC eligible?
Through the chair, that is correct. I will say we are undertaking the DC background study throughout this year, which will be reported onto council and provide a bit more options and details, but that is correct, yeah.
Thank you, sorry. But I think that was almost it. Oh, I'm sorry, that was about the, I can't read my own notes. I guess my final comments would be that some of this does go, it's very much going backwards, making the ministry our planning approval authority now instead of the county. I was here when we used to do that, and there was such a backlog, and it took months to get approval for things, and I fail to see how that is going to speed things along and build homes faster. And also the piece about allowing the developer to decide where the parkland is. Again, we used to have developers tell us that the EP land or the wetland was our new park. We stopped allowing that, and now it looks like we're going backwards again. And then my last comment was just about process going forward. I do like this approach. I do like that we're not, writing to the province and saying, this is going to cost us $23 million. Because to make that assumption when we have all of these regulations still not out and unclear, just gives them ammunition to come back to us and say, well, actually, it's only going to cost you $20 million. You're totally wrong. So I like the idea of just providing them with the more textual answer than the written in sand and coming up with an amount. There's issues with heritage conservation that are top of mind here that are going to have to be dealt with. But I believe the heritage piece is one that's not proclaimed. Is that correct? Okay, so we have a bit of time there maybe. But yeah, just a very good report, very thorough, and I understand it. I thought I understood it before, but I understand it way better now. So thank you for that. And I would ask anyone else if they have any questions or comments before I call the vote. Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation on the screen? That's carried. Next is item C5, and that is Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question for the clerk's office. If there can be a point of clarification, it'd be appreciated. I've received some emails regarding the committee of adjustment and the appointments. I was wondering if you might be able to walk everybody through the process of how the people are chosen and what it entails.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Fowler, and through the chair. The town adopted a policy for committee appointments last May, I believe it was, which is it's a great policy for us because it provides a guiding document as to how we do recruiting for committee members. In the past, people would submit to the clerk's office, and then we would give the applications to council for review, and then they would go through them, and we would make appointments. Unfortunately, this put council in a bad position for favoritism. So the policy actually addresses that because for every committee that council asks to be established, we create a recruitment committee that is specific to that committee's needs, and it includes a person from our people and talent. So we have a human resources lens on the applications. It includes the subject matter expert, so the person who is the staff person who is typically associated with that committee. And it would also include a person from clerk services. So there's impartiality in reviewing the applications. We create a matrix, a scoring matrix, and they're reviewed, all the applications are reviewed independently. The scoring and grading, looking for various skill sets, because you don't want a committee that's created with everybody having the same skill set. You want it kind of to be representative of the community, because they are the ones that are providing the advice to council on specific nature of what that committee was constituted for. So it's a great process. So the applications are reviewed independently. They're graded on the matrix, and then the committee gets together and goes over the pros and cons of each of the applicants, and then the names are put forward to council for appointment. And I believe the process it's working well. It's impartial. And I'm very pleased to report that we are getting a nice number of applicants for each of the committees that have been advertised thus far, which is great because in the past we have had problems with some of our committees, but to date we've had more than enough applications to do a good review.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do you have a seconder for the motion, Deputy Mayor? Thank you. Councillor Drage?
No, I was just going to say it was a point of order there because we didn't have a seconder. We shouldn't have been talking about it yet, but we have one now. It's on me. Thanks.
Thank you. You must be from Ward 7, Councillor Drage. Anyone else have a question or comment? Seeing none, the mover and seconder is on the screen, as is the recommendation. All those in favor of the recommendation? Those opposed? That's carried. Next is item C6, and that's Councillor Waters. And yes, if you have a seconder, Councillor Waters. Councillor Drage is a seconder, and our CEO of In-Services and CFO of In-Services is making their way down, and happy to answer your questions or hear your comments. You're on mute, Councillor Waters.
I'm not making any amendments at all. I just wanted to ask a few questions, and I've already talked to In-Services, and so my question was around why Sandy Cove Acres pays 30% less on their base residential rates for wastewater than the rest of Innisfil residents, including seniors who don't live at Sandy Cove Acres. And so I was just wondering for a history lesson from maybe yourself in terms of why that was decided. And then my second question is, does that same rate apply to their new development across the road? So I was looking for an explanation, and then maybe a question to follow out of that history lesson that I'm going to get.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Thank you, through your worship. So did some research into the Sandy Cove rate, and it looks like a number of years ago, council approved the reduction from 100% to 70%. Sandy Cove is a special circumstance. We In-Services bill for their wastewater, but it's a private water system. So at the time, the average, it's based on the average occupancy. So the average occupancy at Sandy Cove is 1.7 residents per household. I believe the average in the rest of Innisfil is, I think it's 2.3 or 2.5 residents per household. So I can't tell you when it was. I found a report from 2010 which outlined that, but I don't know when the actual In-Services rate was, Sandy Cove rate was created. The second question, at the moment, the only rate that is like that is Sandy Cove existing, to my understanding. So it's not the intention at In-Services to create a special rate for other residents.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because it's a completely different community. So I didn't think that rate should apply to the new community because it's going to be probably a lot of non-seniors and families who live there. So quite a bit different community. So I just wanted to make sure that that same rate didn't apply for the same reason. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. And I'll add just a bit. I can't tell you when it happened either, but I know it's been around for a long, long time. I can tell you that I first discovered it when I was the Ward 7 councillor. So my question at the time was, why didn't it apply to the other land lease community, which is Royal Oak Estates in Cookstown? And the answer that I got back was because it was apples to orange comparison, because Royal Oak Estates is water and wastewater versus Sandy Cove, which was just wastewater. So I'm guessing it's been there since inception of wastewater services in Innisfil, but I could be wrong. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Councillor Waters?
Just a quick follow-up. The original Sandy Cove Acres is changing a little bit. You know, the trailers are being torn down and full houses are being built. And over time, that community may change. I'm not too sure if it'll always remain as seniors and whether or not, whether, younger families will start moving in there. So that would change the numbers per household. So is there any review process over time that In-Services might do? Because like it says, if the community changes and there's more families in there, it just would change the rate, and it would be unfair for a family outside of Sandy Cove Acres be paying more than a family that lives in Sandy Cove Acres. So and it has nothing to do with the seniors who are there now. It's just I'm looking at the future of what that community becomes.
Mr. McAllister?
Through your worship, so again, Sandy Cove is unique. In-Services does not bill the water, so as a result, the reason it's a flat rate is because we don't have water meters. So if you look at the rates, there are for wastewater, there's wastewater base rates and wastewater fixed rates, and where In-Services does not bill a customer water, we bill them the wastewater fixed rate. So in theory, if Sandy Cove was to completely change and become normal, not a seniors residence, but allow families and allow everything else, I'm not sure if council would have to approve that rate change because I don't know how that exactly works. But in theory, Sandy Cove would go to the residential fixed rate, which is already existent.
Thank you, Mr. McAllister. Any other questions or comments on this item? Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple questions on item 2 there, where it talks about the rate increase for the fixed rates and the volumetric rates. Just maybe some explanation on if it's just coincidence that they're both 5%. Would you expect that to always be the case? And then perhaps a comment about the reasons behind these increase in rates for our residents.
Mr. McAllister?
Through your worship. So over the last couple of years, In-Services rates have increased at less than what the rate study had suggested. So we looked at, we created the budget, In-Services Board of Directors approved the budget, and 5% across the board, water, wastewater, fixed and volumetric, is what was needed to bring the rates and the foregone revenue from prior years where the rates weren't increased as much as they should have been, to start to recover some of those that lost revenue. At the moment, in-services is in the process, which we'll be doing through 2023, a new revised rate study. So what we are looking at is for rates for 2024 and on, it'll be twofold. One, it will tie the rates into, in theory, fixed rates are supposed to cover capital costs. Volumetric rates are supposed to cover operating costs. The model that we are going to create will be able to correlate rate increases to capital and to operating on the water side and the wastewater side. And the other part we're looking at, which we'll deal with from a kind of a conservation point of view, is volumetric rates. So as opposed to having one rate for regardless of how much water you use, we'll look at volumetric rates, which will help on the conservation side to reduce the amount of water, but it'll also help to make sure that the costs that residents pay are fully recovered, so that in-services can continue to provide, I mean, under the mandates, provide safe and quality drinking water. So that's where our rate increase ties into our budget, which to provide that service.
Thank you. Councillor Ices, anything else? Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely a delicate balancing act, the flat rate versus the consumption rate. In a municipality like ours that is growing rapidly, we encourage and want conservation, and we can encourage that or incent it through price. The less water you use, if you invest in a low-flow toilet, if you invest in a different items in your house that are going to conserve, you're going to save money, which means we can postpone the next addition to the or expansion of the water treatment plant. So it very much makes sense for us. In other municipalities that have negative or low growth, then not so much, because they need those dollars to operate the system. Having said that, even if you never turn on your tap, ever, there's still a cost to having safe, potable drinking water at the ready whenever you decide to turn on the tap. So there has to be that right balance between having that amount of money to actually run the plant safely and distribute the clean, safe drinking water, but at the other hand, try to incent people to conserve so that we can postpone the next expansion. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation? That is carried. I just wanted to point out too very quickly that there is training coming, mandatory training from the Walkerton Clean Water Center, which will help all of us understand more our responsibility for setting these rates and making sure that that drinking water is properly funded. So I look forward to that training. Okay, item E1, and that is Councillor Saunders. And do you have a seconder, Councillor? The Deputy Mayor is the seconder. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm actually pulling this, and I want to see how to do this. I would like to defer this proposal for the minimum of 6 months. Because there's a lot of legal obligations that we have to be covered from the town. And as a candidate, when I was running for council, I made a number of presentations and expressed these concerns. And the motions raised right now are just shooting red flags up left, right, and center.
Thank you. So there's a motion to defer for 6 months. And do you have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Zanella? Anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions that would show why I'd like to have this deferred, and then the town can come back with some of the answers for it, if I may.
Go ahead. In fact, we'll try to answer some of them right
Yeah.
here and now if we
Yeah, I
can.
don't think you can answer them all, but I know this is be some of the questions.
Thank you.
It says the building is required by the member of Friday Harbor Association, which was created under the Big Bay Association Act of 2010. A 10-meter landscape buffer strip is also required between the building and Big Bay Point. Can the staff provide council the specifics of the BRB Act of 2010 that supports this statement?
I'm looking at, would that be legal or Mr. Parkin?
I can certainly try, through your worship, to Councillor Saunders. So under the Big Bay Resort Association Act, it describes all of the land that would be considered part of the resort, and any owner of land in that area would be automatically a member of the Resort Association and subject to all of the association's bylaws, rules, unless they applied to the Resort Association to be removed from that, but that would be a decision of the association. So whatever rules and bylaws they have in place would apply automatically to whoever owned that piece of property unless it was removed.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Now, does the town staff have any written confirmation from Seasons that they've applied to the Resort Association for membership, and was this granted?
Through your worship, I'm not aware of an application, but by the act itself, they would automatically become a member once they're owners of that property.
See, this is where the red flags are all shooting up. With this amendment, will the land still be considered resort land?
Yes, so it's still part of the entire parcel that forms the resort. It's all described in the legislation. This part lot control exemption bylaw would simply create a new lot within that larger framework of the resort lands.
Can I ask, I'm just going to ask Ms. Lee to...
Just a supplemental on that. So the lands are not only part of the Resort Association, but they are part of the secondary plan area for the Big Bay Point and the Friday Harbor. So they continue to be part of that resort designation that was approved for the entire land area. And that doesn't change through the part lot control.
Okay, so if we change this over to Seasons now, we don't have any confirmation that they're going to go into the Resort Association, first of all. But what's stopping them from selling this land? We have no assurance that Seasons is going to say, oh, we're going to keep it as a resort. We're going to build the seniors' residence. But they've changed their mind every 6 months. We keep seeing more and more amendments with them. So what's to say Seasons is not going to say 6 months down the road, we're selling this land to a new developer and he's going to put a condo there?
Ms. Lee?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. So I'd come back to the official plan policies and the zoning bylaw provisions that are in effect, and they are specific in terms of the uses. So council in September of last year did approve the official plan amendment and the zoning amendment that specifically allowed for the retirement home use and the uses of the property. If a new purchaser bought the property, they have to comply with those uses. That doesn't change with an ownership change. They would have to come back to council through the same process that was followed last year to amend the official plan and amend the zoning bylaw for a use that is not identified in that category.
So there's no guarantee that Seasons is not going to sell that land. So that's now not part of the resort. That's what I'm trying to make. And now, why would they be transferring the 10 meters from Big Bay Point to the land to the Residents Association and not keeping it all as one parcel?
Ms. Lee or Mr. Montgomery? Or Mr. Carrera, whoever wants to answer it.
Through your worship, the landscape strip, from what I understand, is not to be sold off to Seasons, which is the private operator, because it's part of the larger resort association. They need to manage that strip.
Go ahead, Councillor.
See, keeps bringing up more and more red flags. I think we need to keep the deferral on and get some more answers from legal and see what our legalities are if this property we passes and Seasons sells it to another developer. We're on the hook. We could be on the hook. We could be sued by the Resort Association because that land is no longer Friday Harbor. People were buying into Friday Harbor as a resort.
Mr. Parkin?
Thank you, Your Worship. The way that the Act works is it says any owner of lands within the resort that's designated under the Act is automatically a member of the Resort Association. So even if Seasons did decide to sell, which we wouldn't have control over stopping them, if they did, the new owner would automatically become a member of the Resort Association and is part of the resort still.
Councillor, if I could, I just want to put my 2 cents worth in. I understand that, that there has been a lot of changes there. If you saw the amount of legal agreements and the thickness of the zoning bylaw and the secondary plan for that, and we did, if you recall, I know you were here in the last term of council when we made sure that there was no way that this retirement community could come out of the Resort Association. We did so. But I also just want to let you know that we use part lot control bylaw all the time. Probably at least one every meeting. Sometimes it would skip a meeting, but almost one every meeting. So every developer, every townhouse, they have to separate that piece so that they can sell off and sever those pieces to go on before they go on to the next one. So it's a common tool in the Planning Act that we use all the time. And just at the end of the report, it talks about that there was this is not the first part lot control exemption application submitted to the town by Friday Harbor, as the townhouses also had part lot control, as did the boat slips, the roads, and the servicing corridors, and the boat slips, and they were all created through the same process. So I understand your trepidation, I really, truly do, but the other issue I would be concerned about when you brought up lawsuits is we designate authority to approve part lot control to staff, and our staff have already said that they approve it. So for our staff to approve it and for us not to pass the bylaw, I think might put us in a precarious position. I'm not a lawyer. I would defer to the lawyers for that, but those are just my comments. Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess my question to, and I agree with what you just said. My other comment would be deferring something for 6 months. Even though some of us may disagree with the retirement home going ahead, 6 months puts a huge financial burden on both Friday Harbor and Seasons. So I don't know why we need 6 months to get those types of answers. I think most of them seem to be answered tonight. But if the councillor is looking for a deferral, I would say till next council meeting. 6 months seems to be an effort to delay it further than it needs to be deferred. I think we can find all the answers and satisfy some of his concerns much faster than that if they haven't already been answered tonight. So just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Saunders, did you have any other questions or concerns? Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to defer for 6 months, moved by Councillor Saunders and seconded by Councillor Zanella. All those in favor? That's not carried. So is the remover and a seconder? I assume you don't want to move the original motion, Councillor Saunders? Okay, so if we could have a mover for the original motion. Nobody? Councillor Ices? Oh, sorry, I wasn't looking at my screen. Sorry, Councillor Drudge. Councillor Ices, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Fowler. All those in favor? That's carried. And can I suggest, Councillor Saunders, don't leave with questions and red flags still in your head. Please make an appointment to sit down with our Director of Legal Services and our Director of Growth. And I want all of your red flags to be answered, regardless of the fact that the bylaw has been passed. I don't want you to going away with those fears. Okay. Thank you. Did I call the vote? Yes, I did. And next is the RISE recommendation. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Fowler, Councillor Saunders, all those in favor? That is carried. And now we go to adopting the recommendations from Committee of the Whole. And I'm going to ask for it to be moved by Councillor Waters and seconded by Councillor Drudge. All those in favor? That is carried. Do we have any notices of motion? Which notice has been given? Councillor Waters has a notice of motion which will be provided on the February 22nd, 2023 meeting with consideration on March the 8th. Thank you, Councillor, for the notice. And next is announcements. Deputy Mayor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's going to be a very, very busy weekend in the upcoming times. Just to give everybody a heads up, if you have a bit of free time, now will be the time to plan ahead. Starting off on Saturday at 10 a.m. at Grange Hall, they're having the Pride event, the vendors event. Cookstown has an all-day event, which actually looks very interesting. There's snow tubing with mascots between 11 and 1 at the Toboggan Hill at Innisfil Beach Park, and at 1 o'clock at the Lakeshore Library is a program, The Mosaic of Black Culture. It's actually very interesting. I've attended them before. I'm planning on attending this one again. And then on Sunday, we have at 6 p.m., we're renaming the Lefroy Arena in honor of Constable Morgan Russell. At 6 o'clock, we should be in attendance there. That's something that I plan on attending very much out of respect for the gentleman. And last but not least, come February 25th, Ice Corp is having their annual polar bear dip for, I believe it is Gilda's Club, Simcoe Muskoka. And I plan on announcing that I'm going to be taking a dive into the lake. So I'm taking one for the team, and I'm looking for anyone who wishes to assist to help raise funds. Reach out, please. I'm more than happy to throw myself in more than once if it gets an extra few dollars for people in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to give an update on my attempt. Council endorsed my attempt to be on the Roma Board of Directors, and there was the Roma conference was held in a couple weeks ago, and there was a total of 6 councillors that ran for that position, and unfortunately I was not able to win that, but I appreciate council's support on that. My other comment was regards to upcoming events. On Family Day, if you're looking for a great family event, The Historical Society is having their annual event at the Knox Community Hall on the 9th line. You can learn a new skill: sewing, mending, hammering a nail, polishing silverware, and the list goes on. Hot chocolate and homemade cookies as well. So put that on your calendar for Family Day, February 20th. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments, announcements? So thank you to Councillor Ices and Deputy Mayor Fowler for covering our winter weekends. We're halfway through and we're getting great attendance. So kudos to staff for all of the work that goes into putting these events together and for partnering with the community and working with the different organizations in the town to make these things happen. I also wanted to, other than those announcements, just comment on a couple that were missed. Sandy Cove Acres is having a customer service pop-up at the Wheel on Valentine's Day. So things like getting your parking pass or maybe updating your dog license or different things, we come to you. So I hope that there's great turnout from Sandy Cove. There's stormwater management master plan, which sounds very dull, right? Stormwater management master plan update. So we call it flooding strategy. And a whole bunch more people pay attention when you say flooding strategy. So there's 3 events. One is tomorrow night in Lefroy, one is Monday night at Town Hall, and one's the last day of February in Cookstown. And finally, the YMCA asked if I would announce that they're offering free tutoring for students in grades 6 to 12 all across Simcoe County, so including here in Innisfil. So the tutoring sessions can be booked on the website. They can have as much as 5 people in a class, but if you prefer one-on-one tutoring, you can call them and have that arranged as well. And it's a big, long website, but basically it's tutorbooking@ymca.ca. So, but I've got the larger website. If anybody's interested in it, I'll be happy to forward it to you. So to ask CAO Gershow, is there any announcements on the betterment of the community? Seeing none, then we'll go to the confirming bylaw. And that would be moved by Councillor Richardson and seconded by Councillor Constantine. All those in favor? That is carried. And finally, our adjournment. Oh, I can't believe we finished at 8:40 p.m. So moved by Councillor Drodge and seconded by Deputy Mayor Fowler. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.